Hello, and welcome to the real most wonderful time of the year, with all due respect to Andy Williams' G1 season. My name is Bruce Lord, and I have the honor of kicking off Post Wrestling's coverage of each and every match in the most illustrious tournament in pro wrestling with my regular partner in all things New Japan, Karen Peterson. Karen, are you feeling festive? Are your lion mark towels hung by the chimney with care in the hopes that Saint Tanahashi will soon be there?
I mean, I am wearing a Desperado and Starlight Kid shirt, so I don't know if I'm really dressed for the season. But there was a Tokon shopping a couple of years ago during the pandemic where Tanahashi did do a Christmas themed photo shoot, and I may or may not have one of those portraits in my possession.
Oh,
so yes, I'm always looking forward to Saint Tanahashi coming over and blessing my house with great hair. But yeah, no, we are in the G1 season is here. I can't believe we're halfway through the year. We're in, or more than halfway. We're in July now. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm always happy to talk wrestling with you, and we'll get through it. We always do.
We always do. And I mean, we'll get into it in a minute in terms of our general thoughts about this year's tournament as compared to the last couple of iterations thereof. Obviously, we will be getting to detailed talk of all 9 of the matches, which happened today from the greater Chicagoland area. But off the top, we do want to let folks know that while this show is going up on the free Post Wrestling feed, the site's coverage of each and every single G1 show going forward is going to continue all the way to the finals on August 16th on the Post Wrestling Cafe. So if you are not a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe, you're going to want to head on over to postwrestlingcafe.com. Technically, if you were feeling really crafty and sneaky and wanted to time signing up at the $8 level just before the Sapporo shows on the 18th and 19th, you could get a full run of the coverage of the tournament for just 1 month's cost. There's going to be a slew of post luminaries covering the shows, including John Pollock and Wei Ting themselves, Kate from Montreal, Karen and myself, the ever opinionated WH Park, and the world's #1 Seiya SANADA fan, Eric Marcotte. Karen,
I have been dethroned, and I'm okay with it.
I checked, and I don't know if it's Kismet or John Pollock's scheduling wizardry, but Eric Marcotte will be covering the card that features SANADA versus Jake Lee. Surely a match everyone will be going back and watching for match of the year consideration come December.
Wow. That is the matchup of my fallen favorites.
So Christmas definitely coming early for Eric Marcotte. But of course, G1 coverage is not the only thing that you will be getting on the Post Wrestling Cafe for the next month. You get XL editions of the Raw, SmackDown, and Dynamite reviews. Kate continuing the AEW coverage on Collision Course. Rewind Away episodes, where this month I will actually be joining, coincidentally, John and Wei to talk about some highlights from the career of the Dangerous Queen herself, Akira Hokuto. All that and so much more for just $8 a month. So you want to head on over to postwrestlingcafe.com if you aren't a member to make sure that you do not miss out on any of the G1 coverage that we have for you, and so much more over the next month. Speaking of the Post Wrestling Cafe, Karen, you already previewed the tournament on Post Pro Wrest with WH, although I believe that was a free show. But given that, it's you and I sitting down here to talk New Japan and G1, do you want to just kind of give a quick little temperature check to our listeners in terms of your interest in this year's tournament?
Well, it's shifted slightly after the show last night. Only because, cautiously optimistic. And we talked, before we started recording, we talked off air comparing this G1 opener in the United States compared to the one that happened in Dallas in 2019. And the cards, what we would equivocate to star power, there is a definite imbalance compared to what we had on this card, but to that one. But that being said, there was a surprising turnout. 2, some people really surprised me in their presentation on this particular card. And also, I want to say I'm more cautiously optimistic than I was when I recorded with WH a couple of weeks ago. So I'm curious to see how the tournament shakes out. My only concern is with so many younger guys or, debutante entries, is that not all of them are used to the rigors of the G1, that it's not a sprint. This is a marathon in the months in Japan with the worst air conditioning possible. You can ask WH, you can quote me on that one. That I mean, I again pleasantly surprised. I like where it's going, but I feel like the heat and the humidity is going to be something that's going to be possibly the unofficial wrecker of the entire tournament.
I mean, we just saw. I know you're not a big AEW viewer, but we just saw the degree that heat and humidity can affect wrestling just last week. Yeah, it's obviously nice to see the younger talent occupying so many of the spots this year. Though, I mean, really at this point, the likes of Umura and Shota Umino can we call them young at this point? I don't know that we can. But of course, like you and I have been saying,
I'm in my upper 40s at this point, so anyone under 35 is young.
Yeah.
But I mean, yes, they are all closing in on 30 at this point, which
and they all have a lot, they've all come back from whatever excursions they might have had quite a while ago. And as you and I have been saying on the regular New Japan review shows, the problem has just lied in the absolutely glacial pace at which they have been elevated or not elevated, in terms of kind of things to be critical of this year, right? We flat out wasted half a year of Aaron Wolf's development. Ryohei Oiwa, I think, has had very little to show in terms of, in storyline championship wins, despite some incredible work and a real improvement that he's shown in the last 2 years that he's been back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You and I talk about this all the time. But what I will say this year is that given the departures, there is the real sense that it is kind of an open playing field, a mix of Umura, Umino, Boltin, Oiwa, Wolf, plus obviously, like somebody like Newman, who's already been officially crowned, and maybe even somebody like a Maloney able to make a bit of a run if the booking is there. And there are so many names in that mix.
I will say this, which I felt cheated that we did not have the Maloney versus Kid match on this opening card, because they are the only two that didn't have a match. And I get to enjoy it next week with John Pollock, but I'm just like, that could have been a match that put a couple of extra seats.
I think it would have, but I'm wondering if that's something that they because of Kid's the slight differences with which Kid has been presented in North America versus Japan, and the desire to have him be, I mean, arguably at this point, possibly the number one heel in the company, at least to a domestic Japanese audience. I'm wondering if they maybe really wanted to save that for a Japanese audience, because that did sort of stand out to me as those are the two guys that are not working on this card. That's interesting given how frequent. I mean, Kid's obviously been in North America a lot, and we did just see Maloney at Forbidden Door.
Be proud of me. I watched Forbidden Door. I watched all of it.
Of course, you got to watch the product, Karen. And technically, that was a New Japan co-branded show.
Yes, dear.
Even if the booking didn't make it seem as such. In terms of kind of quantifying who's positioned as top talent in the tournament, at least in terms of storyline, quick little breakdown of the number of main events, or main event matches that the performers have. In the A block, no surprise that it's Yota Tsuji in the lead with 5. Shingo has 3. Takeshita has 2. Goto has 2. Boltin has 2. And Yuto-Ice even has 2. Over in B block, it's Yuya Umura and Shota Umino, each with 4. Gabe Kidd has 2. Zack has 1. Narita has 1. Wolf and Newman also each have 1.
Zack having 1 is very surprising.
I think you're seeing a formal downcycling of Zack and Goto this year, as you should in any healthy wrestling ecosystem. Speaking of downcycling, it is nice to see a downcycled House of Torture in the G1. That said, my one little quibble, especially if we're talking about a domestic Japanese audience and who is over in front of that crowd, I think it's kind of nuts that you couldn't find a spot for Taichi, one of the most over and reliable bell-to-bell performers in Japan itself.
Yeah.
You can beat him like a drum in this tournament, and it doesn't matter. You still have obviously, and we're going to get into it, a still very physically weakened SANADA in this tournament, who is not really factored into anything. right now, just if we're talking
Yeah.
about quality of matches and who is going to make some of these younger guys look as good as they can. I think there's a lot more to be gotten out of a Taichi in that spot than a SANADA.
I agree, but this is also where I say this is also where you could depend on somebody like a Yoshihashi, because he's consistent. He's not going to be your main eventer, but he's a consistent wrestler. And I was pleasantly surprised by some people on this card, but knowing how the G1 grinds on, I feel like some of them might be a bit more exposed depending on who they're wrestling against.
Oh yeah. I think we're going to have to get to that in the case of a couple of the wrestlers here tonight. Moving ahead, before we get into the actual matches themselves, if this is your first time checking out post coverage of the G1, we try to kind of offer general. Yes. Well, certainly. Welcome. You're going to have fun. We obviously are going to try to offer, our critical evaluations of matches, and we do end up doing so using a 5-point scale, but it's not stars that we dole out here. It's a whole slew of accolades, particular to each of us as commentators or reviewers. Myself, I enjoy, I'm now an accredited spirits and Scotch whiskey expert, Karen.
Excuse me, Mr. Lord.
Yeah, got my W set level 2 taken care of. So yeah,
I love that for you. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. So I like to kind of accord star rankings tied in with various rankings and levels of Scotch whiskey. So a 1-star match, I like to accord that a Johnny Walker Red award, something that just makes you ask, why am I watching wrestling? Why am I drinking this? I'd rather be staring at a blank screen. I'd rather be drinking absolutely nothing at all. The sort of experience that, if repeated too often, makes you question either whiskey or pro wrestling as a hobby. 2-star, going for Auchentoshan, really any of the core range of Auchentoshan. It's Scotch whiskey. It's wrestling. You're drinking it / washing it. You have no particular feelings about it. You will not remember anything about it a couple of hours later. It's inoffensive, but leaves absolutely no impression whatsoever. A 3-star whiskey, I like to give a Highland Park 12 rating to. You're drinking whiskey, you're watching wrestling, and actually feeling okay about your decision to do so. It will not leave a massive lasting impression on you, but in the moment, you're enjoying your choice. You're enjoying your decision to sit down and watch this G1 match or sit down with this particular dram. A 4-star match gets a Glenn Farkless 17 award. Really, really good stuff. You would recommend either to anyone with an interest in whiskey or in wrestling. Something that kind of reminds you of, right, yeah, this is why I get up at very odd hours of the day to watch New Japan or whatever it might be. This is why I shell out a little bit more money for a finer dram than just whatever, swill they have, on the bottom shelf there. So that's a 4-star rank, is the Glenn Farkless 17. The very, very rare, really, really prying out the wallet for a 5-star vintage Port Ellen whiskey, just beauty and power in a ring or a glass, something that stays with you for a very, very long time and almost prompts you to sort of come to a deeper understanding of, right, this is why I love this thing. Not just that I love it, but here's why I love it. I come to a better understanding of what makes this so special as a form of art or as a craft. So again, these are just star ratings, but they are just gussied up a little bit. Karen, sounds like we're getting the Scotch and Ice Cream band back together. Is that correct?
Yes, I am pulling the ice cream truck out of the garage because the heat waves, I don't ever remember a time where the weather in Florida has hit over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's been like that for the last week and a half. It's been miserable. So the ice cream truck is back. I'm opening up the ice cream shop. So 1 scoop is 1 star. My half and quarter and 3/4 will all be extra toppings. But talking about, the best of the best, your 5-star matches, that will be what I affectionately call the kitchen sink. When I was a kid, there is an ice cream place down in South Florida called Jackson's, and they serve, it's not an actual kitchen sink, but it's like a makeshift giant bowl of all kinds of ice cream, anything you want, all the toppings. They have some sparklers, and you share it with your friends. That's how good a 5-star match has to be. It's the kind where I'm just like, come share this buffet of wonderful ice cream with me. But yeah, so ice cream's back. It's easy.
It is easy and delicious. Why not? Why not?
Yes.
Um,
And 0 calories. I'm giving
I
away 0-calorie ice cream all summer.
0 Okay, now we're just entering into our own wacky fantasy land here at
Hey,
that point,
man.
but
We gotta
I
find
guess
whimsy. Gotta find
technically,
whimsy where
pro
we
watching
can.
pro wrestling is a 0-calorie activity, although I'm generally snacking while I'm watching it. But anyway,
Yes.
um, so we're obviously starting the G1 off kind of, with a week buffering period with the first G1 show to happen in the United States since 2019. We are at the Now Arena in Hoffman Estates, Illinois, basically aka suburban outlying Chicago here. Do you have any thoughts about the decision to have kind of this, 1 week ahead of time, kind of taster or primer for the tournament happening in the US at a time when there has been a real, I think, scaling back of the company's US presence? Obviously, we have, kind of Windy City Riot has sort of become the one, annual
Yeah.
US show of note that the company can regularly do. But, the Strong brand has basically completely
Yeah.
disappeared.
I mean, they also
RIP.
do usually do Battle in the Valley, like, and it like around New Beginning time. It's nice to see a return to bringing back the G1. I went to the G1 in 2019 in Dallas, so it was kind of nice to see that, you know, acknowledgement of the, that New Japan Global is still kind of a thing, that they still have interest in it. Um, I did like that this time around there was it was just a full G1 card. It felt like a proper G1 opener where you have pretty much all meat, no filler.
Mhm.
Uh, but I feel like Chicago area keeps getting spoiled with all the really good matches. I don't like, I'm salty. I'll say it. They don't ever bring the G1 or anything like of this level to Orlando. The closest we get is a house show in Tampa. So it's one of those things where it's like I would love to have more of this, but it also feels a little more special because the shows that are New Japan branded are so few and far between these days. Like it's kind of like when they do ever so often they roll out Royal Quest over in the UK. It feels special,
Mhm. Mhm.
but
Yeah,
it's been quite some time since we've had one.
yeah, yeah, 7 full years. If to get into the numbers of that, we had 4,125 in Hoffman Estates last night. And for comparison, this is a building that, does run, a handful of pro wrestling shows per year. You had 8,968 to come see World's End for AEW last December. In terms of, like we said, kind of mainline New Japan shows, in North America, you had them drawing 2,605 in Jersey to see the aforementioned New Beginning in the USA show. And that Dallas show that you are referring to, Karen, way back in 2019, they put 4,856 into Dallas to see what ended up being the second to last Tanahashi Okada match on American soil. The fantastic Lance Archer Osprey match, lots of other goodies on there. Sales for this show were fairly slow and sluggish to start. It looks like they did get kind of a bump of, 6 or 700 in the last week or so, or at least as walk up or something like that. I think it's not a great number, but it's a respectable number given the drop off in star power, right? That
Yeah.
the company has had since 2019, and certainly in terms of North American buzz about New Japan since 2019. A drop off of about, what is that? I guess about 700
Yeah.
off of that. It's not great, but it's not
Yeah.
terrible either.
Well, it's not like it's the other shows where it's like they're pulling in 2,000 people. It's not
No.
700. You can't begrudge them 700 when again we were talking about star power. It's very very different. The New Japan that a lot of people knew from back in 2019 is not the New Japan it is
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. That said, like, as that AEW number points to, this is a fairly big building. You could
yep.
fit at least twice as many people
Yeah.
in it for a pro wrestling show, right? So I do think that just in terms of the look of this show, they were very much, it was very low lit. I think with
Yep.
with an eye towards, keeping some of the emptier, obviously the upper deck, not even close to going on sale, but also to blacking out some of the emptier sections. And I think also like there almost seemed to be a reticence to use much hard cam because there were some empty seats that you could see hard cam side. So you had a lot of like really close to the ring, low angle shots. I
Yeah.
noticed for a lot of this. Um, I hate to
That-
nitpick these things, but you and I end up, we watch the American New Japan shows right after watching the Japanese ones.
Yeah.
This was very dark at times. It was difficult. There were a couple of matches in the early going where it was really difficult to follow some of the outside of the ring stuff, and not in terms of like, oh, we don't have a camera there and the guys have wandered off to brawl into the crowd. We just don't have coverage of it, but just it's not bright enough to see what is
Yeah.
happening 10 feet in front of the camera.
I'll say this much. At least the color temperature was the same. It was consistent. It was just dark.
Yeah. I also thought that there was some a little bit of miking issues and mixing issues on English commentary. Chris Charlton in particular, I don't know if he was speaking quietly or was mixed quietly at a couple of times there. So
it seemed like the ring mic was a higher level than Chris was. So it's like I would have to turn the volume up to hear him, but then I'd get my ear blown out when something in the
by
match.
the bumps or whatever. Yeah. There's always something happening and it differs, right? Sometimes the feed drops out, or sometimes the color balance wasn't great on this show either, as I'm sure Wei will notice when he gets around to watching it. But
better, but not wonderful.
There's always just some little technical thing that kind of puts a bit of a crimp on some of these shows. But yeah, it is what it is. So getting into,
I'll say this much real quick. I like that it was included on New Japan World and was not an extra fee.
Yeah, you can't.
Because,
I don't think
because I was before I opened up New Japan World to watch. I was checking email. I'm like, is it on Triller? I don't know where it is. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I was pleasantly surprised. And this is what we've been saying is that even when they have their shows international, they should have it on their platform and not have it at an additional pay-per-view cost.
Yep. Yeah, no, and I think it's always been like since they started New Japan World, there's part of me that is still, remembers kind of when, New Japan was just starting to kind of make more of a foray into, the North American market, right? And the idea that like,
Access TV.
All of those things, right? And all the different, going back far enough and just people like waiting for uploads and everything like that. The idea that you can basically just spend 20 American bucks or even 10 American bucks to get a full month of G1 is like, God, it's still, it's nice. A fantastic value. It's a fantastic value still. And I think everybody in Chicago, like you said, 9 full matches of straight traditional G1 competition. You and I have talked a lot about how like part of the problem with those strong shows, right, was that it would be this mixture of kind of the local North American talent that were kind of part of the satellite universe of New Japan, but we're just still at the end of the day, a lot of North American indie guys, that would be on those cards, plus 2, 3, 4, New Japan regulars. But, like when I went down to the show at the Walter Pyramid, for instance, like I'm going there because I want to see Hiroshi Tanahashi and Hirooki Goto and like all of the actual, the stars of New Japan. That's what I'm there for. So, the crowd in Chicago did very much get that. I think across these nine matches, there wasn't any attempt to flesh out the undercard with like local dudes and multi-mans or anything like that, or even bringing the strong tag champions up from Mexico.
The ever elusive New Japan Strong Openweight Tag Team Champions.
In case Rocky's listening, don't remind him that those exist. I just want them to live in Mexico forever. Anyway, starting things off, Aaron Wolf versus HENARE. Here we are with just one non-House of Torture singles match under his belt. Aaron Wolf is in the G1. I'm kind of thinking this, before this match started, I'm just like, all right, good luck, buddy. You're kind of, you're being thrown into the deep end, theoretically, without much preparation. With the way the block math worked I had him losing much of the first half of the tournament in my predictions, but I also thought that HENARE was a really smart first opponent for him in terms of how plain and direct you knew this match was going to be in terms of HENARE's working style. It's the first of 9 matches, so you know it's probably not going very long. I thought just before the bell had even rung, they kind of set Wolf up for success in that regard, which the company has not always done this year. Wolf is wearing some silver tights with a fur-lined vest. The crowd breaks out into a G1 chant as we get going. HENARE gets the advantage in some strike exchanges, but Wolf is able to block a few of those and nail his big carry-over Uranage that he started to use. He cuts off HENARE's rampage spear and hits a series of judo takedowns and a power slam. He's able to cut HENARE off midair and get him up eventually for an angle slam, and then the reverse angle slam that he has begun to use to pin HENARE in 9 minutes. This was, I thought, a very simple and direct match in pretty much exactly the way that we expected in terms of, ranking systems. I thought this was just a very nice, very basic 3-star glass of Highland Park to start things off, pretty much exactly meeting expectations, meeting the brief on paper that was given here.
It was very simple, and when I was talking about being pleasantly surprised, I was pleasantly surprised. Having the Wolf go over HENARE was a choice that I don't know how I feel about it, especially when they were making this big deal about HENARE finally being back for G1. But I'll give it 3 scoops. 1 strawberry, 1 chocolate, 1 vanilla, nice little Neapolitan, nothing too fancy. But again, pleasantly surprised by it.
What I really wanted to say about this is that I think between this and that Yoshihashi, match, we've been kind of vindicated, I think, so far in our questioning of the decision to saddle this guy with House of Torture for the entirety of 2026, not just using the evil match as a good, right, okay, fine. He puts those guys in the rearview mirror and gets on with business, but really kind of just, forestalling his development in terms of actual wrestling matches. And I don't think that's because scumming it up with the House of Torture for the last 6 months has necessarily made him a worse wrestler.
No.
I do think that it has damaged his aura in Japan, but I think it's because, look, if you watch this match or the Yoshihashi match, there are the beginnings. There's the foundation of a really solid pro wrestler in Aaron Wolf who did not need to be siloed off into the House of Torture clown car for fear of exposing him. Is he still a little hesitant here and there? Yeah, of course. There was kind of the cutoff of the Rampage spear and a couple of other moments in this match. There's definitely room for improvement in those things. But the floor for this tournament since the pandemic, since after that 2019 show that you would have seen, right? The floor for who gets into this tournament has included Tongaloa, Hikuleo, Chase Owens, Don Fale, Yujiro, and of course this year a still very shaky SANADA, Ren Narita, and Jake Lee this year, as we're going to talk about in a minute. Yeah. So I just don't think, if it has been a case of New Japan Brass or whoever's been, the degree to whether it's Goto or other people who maybe have a hand in the booking, if they've been kind of like pearl clutching over whether or not we can really expose this guy through, full matches and everything like that. Again, one, that's your own fault for not tuning him up by having him work with, actual wrestlers. Correct. But I don't think but I think a match like this shows that it's ridiculous to say oh, we're concerned or we were worried about whether this guy was, up to measuring the standard for the base level of the standard for the G1 in 2026. I think this match shows that he was probably ready to do that even before the evil match.
I feel like had they paired him consistently with other wrestlers between January and now, we'd be seeing a different Aaron Wolf. And I feel like we've been kind of cheated because they've been very gun shy when it comes to him. Because you could have had him in a program with Shingo, you could have had him in a program with Goto, Yoshihashi, Taichi, all the guys that were are the workhorse guys or the New Japan dads that haven't started plotting their paths to retirement. And it's like seeing him in this match against Nari, I saw the potential there, and I saw what New Japan saw in him to want to make him a professional wrestler. But I feel like if they're going to put him in the G1 and not give him the young lion, you get one win if you're lucky sort of situation, who he's paired with in the rest of the block may really expose how he can function without it'll be my Shota Umino argument.
Mhm.
Is he as good as they say he is, or is he as good as his opponent is?
Yeah, yeah, and I think, well, we're gonna get into another wrestler who I think we're gonna have to very much have that, like, who is he wrestling for the remainder of the tournament. I think that, like, expectations for Wolf, both amongst North American and Japanese fans, are measured in terms of like, look, I'm not expecting him to go out there and be Konosuke Takeshita every single
No.
night. I am expecting him to be a unique and interesting quantity and presence in this company who does the really cool judo throw segments in the middle, who's able to muscle a big dude like HENARE up for an angle slam and everything like that. Like, people want to get behind this guy, I
Yes.
think, and people are going to want to kind of like overlook minor little nitpicks that you could make in a
He
match
need
like this one.
he also needs to find his confidence, because even in the match with Hanare, he did his big moves, but he looked like he was overthinking the entire time. He wasn't like giving that I'm a big dude who can throw big dudes energy. It was the is this okay if I throw you? Is it okay if I do this now? And it's endearing. And I as a person, I was like, I want to cheer for that person, but at the same time, I'm like, you're telling me this is the next like beast of New Japan, and he just seems like the nicest guy who would help me like pick up like something off the top shelf in the grocery store. I
It's
need him to
interesting.
have that aura that he had when he was an Olympian.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, but that's the thing, right? Like, I think this is something that you can see. I think you definitely can see it in even in somebody in a very different discipline, like an Oka Sasaki in
Yeah,
Noah right now, where you have people making a pretty quick transition over from
yeah,
a legitimate combat sports career to one in which there has to be obviously give and take and trust and all of that, right? Like, when you are somebody who is used to going into a judo ring, an octagon, a cage, whatever it happens to be, with an eye towards just absolutely, literally dismantling your opponent, I do think there's always going to be a little bit of that gun shy hesitation about that, right? And it's very rare that you have somebody who comes into the business, obviously can make the work look incredible, but then can have that combination of like the presentation of killer instinct and that confidence, right? Like, everybody was making a lot of compare, like, in terms of, oh, here's how famous, Aaron Wolf is. Like, he's Kurt Angle, but times five in terms of,
yeah,
how well known he is in Japan versus Angle in North America. But that, like,
yeah,
overlooks the fact that, Angle was just a freak one in a million exception who
yeah,
immediately understood all of the tiny little connective and instinctive things that a pro wrestler needs to have that a combat sports
absolutely.
person does not have. And those things will come, right? Those things will come. I have no doubt about that with Aaron Wolf. But again, it just sort of puts into light, we could have had him doing this for 6 months. He could have been out
Correct.
there like having matches with Kojima or any of the, I know, not to, longtime listeners know that Karen and I spent the last 6 months basically reciting a list of people we'd rather see Aaron Wolf fighting than the House of Torture. But hey, it is what it is. Moving along, up next, Shingo Takagi versus Jake Lee. Shingo kind of on a bad run of luck stateside. His team loses at Forbidden Door. He eats a pin on Collision. And now, okay, let's try to get something watchable out of Jake Lee in front of, I think, a US audience that, at least when going into it, I was expecting to have very little investment in the not so silent jester, at least compared to Japanese crowds. Jake Lee has a slightly more sort of Crow and Sting styled makeup on. There's a bit of a reaction for him, but not much of one. Of course, a very favorable one for Shingo, who is cheering him on as it's the Jake Lee, it's the Jake Lee shtick. He's doing his pantomime. He's hopping around like a kid in a grade 8 Camellia Dell'Arte production. He's and this was kind of the issue with this match, I think, just the overselling of Shingo's offense and this very gingerly executed bumping. He nominally takes control with some very light strikes. There's the looming threat to be fair, of Lee getting that giant killer knee, which ostensibly injured Shingo right around the time of his honeymoon. Funny that. Shingo gets a Death Valley driver on the floor about 5 minutes in, and a legitimately very impressive high angle superplex off of the big man from the top rope, 4-2. However, the giant knee to the gut halts his momentum. There's a dragon screw to Lee's repaired leg, and a sliding pumping bomber, which gets Shingo a 2. Another stalling Death Valley driver gets a 2, but after gouging at Shingo's face, a face break shot, Lee's big running kick into the corner, gives him the win in 10 minutes and 14 seconds. This was pretty plotting, and I think very selling focused. Let's just say that. Pretty thin in terms of actual work. Yes, it's Shingo, and yes, things like that superplex looked great. But when your opponent cannot actually go toe-to-toe with you in terms of strikes, cannot get up after a bump to kind of feed in a sustained way, there isn't too much there. We're kind of at a point with Jake Lee where I am beginning to see points of comparison with like any number of, let's say, very immobile giants going back through the history of pro wrestling. He can hit a couple of impressive strikes spread out across a match, but it is a lot of smoke and mirrors that he is using to thread these matches together. And look, if you're into, you know, big dude doing Fortnite dancing, sure, fine. God bless you, but it's not really what I watch the G1 for. I thought this was a very thin and watery glass of 2-star Akintoshin.
Yeah, it was 2 scoops of vanilla in a very sad paper cup that was probably leaking for me. And I hate to say that because one, I like both of these wrestlers, but Shingo was trying to move the heavens and the stars above to make this match exciting. And I feel bad for Jake Lee at this point because I know that he has so many limitations, but I was wondering if they were kind of behind him because he kind of looked like a juggalo, but then I was just like, no, it's more Crow inspired makeup.
Okay. Oh, you know what? No, you've done it. You've solved all of our problems. Oh my God, Karen. He goes to GCW. Vince Russo can book him for the next 3 years. Yes. This is perfect. Oh my God. Oh, All Japan, Noah, New Japan,
GCW.
Oh my God. Oh, you've done it. You've squared the circle. You've solved the riddle of the silent jester, Karen Peterson. Bless you. Bless you.
You're welcome.
Somebody explain Fortnite to Vince Russo and show him the video of him dance. Yes. Please make this happen. Make this happen. Yeah, no, I mean, like, look, again, like, I understand, like, look, Lee was never like a massively accomplished wrestler. I think he's somebody who certainly his best moments in All Japan and Noah were the product of who he was in there with, right? And then was very quickly exposed, I think, in New Japan even before the injury. And now after, again, like, it's a legitimate, devastating, life-changing injury that, you know, the dude suffered. But like, look, if you had to relearn to walk 6 months ago, maybe, you know, having the G1 is not really the circumstance, you know, under which to do your physiotherapy. But anyway, another match that I think kind of parallels this one in terms of a very, very excellent wrestler having to try to get something out of a wrestler who is still recovering from a really significant injury. That is interesting to kind of compare that match to, that we'll come back to in a minute. But before then, we're moving on to OSKAR versus Ren Narita. As many people have pointed out, as one of the House of Torture reps in the tournament, Narita is effectively in the classic, you know, Yano Toru spot in the G1 now. He's just there to hand out the odd loss that doesn't really affect anything other than tournament math, right? Losing to Narita doesn't actually matter. It's just there to make the numbers work. On the plus side, you knew that TV Asahi was not going to pay to fly Yujiro and Dick Togo and Sho over to Chicago just for this match. So everybody, you know, sit back and enjoy what will probably be the cleanest Ren Narita match you will get all tournament. OSKAR is able to overcome a blindsided attack from Narita before the bell, but gets his knee smashed up by a chair on the outside. Narita keeps torquing it back inside the ring. OSKAR is power slamming the much smaller man while still selling the knee. The crowd is chanting "House of Bullshit." Good work, Chicago. Narita kicks at OSKAR's knee to escape his sleeper and puts his stump puller knee bar on. OSKAR blocks a double cross attempt and then gets that big, I think it's called the Nightmare Sleeper, reapplied, spinning Narita around in it for good measure as Narita goes out to a referee's decision in 9 minutes and 42 seconds. This was that match that I was referring to earlier where like the lighting and camera work, I could not follow what was going on the outside, the brawling on the outside. Obviously nothing great or special, but at least there was only the one chair spot, which kind of broke the suspension of disbelief by House of Torture standards. That's very good. Really, we're just kind of looking at basic, baby's first grimy heel work, from Ren Narita. Most importantly, the point of this match was to make OSKAR look dominant, and he did here. So I'm going to go, can't say too much about this, but I thought this was a fairly healthy pour of 2+ star Auchentoshan, some nuts and olives on the side.
Yeah, it was. I would also give it 2 scoops with like some sprinkles and a cherry on top because it was the cleanest match we saw Ren wrestle in a very long time. But also, I think it helped remind us that OSKAR is often like he could be one of like the dark horses of the tournament because people always overlook him when they're talking about the big foreign wrestlers in New Japan. But yeah, I liked seeing shades of the Ren Narita I remember. But if the arenas are going to be this darkly lit, please have the wrestlers wear bright costumes so I can see what's going on. Because it was kind of like camouflage. They just kept disappearing throughout the match.
Yeah, they were both wearing a lot of black, of course, as well. But yeah, no, I think like this is a real. Again, if you're a regular listener to mine and Karen's, New Japan reviews, fair warning, there's a lot of complaining about the House of Torture. But I think a match like this is like, look, if you dial it back a bit, if you just stick with the basics of pro wrestling healing, there's nothing wrong with heels in New Japan. There's nothing wrong with heels cheating in New Japan. It's just that there's a line that is completely crossed, and everybody from the poor refs to the poor commentators has to sort of go through the same cliches of exhaustion and disgust at what it just ends up being a very boring match. So again, I'm going basically 2.5 stars on this match.
Same.
But like it did what it was supposed to do, right? In terms of giving OSKAR a big win in just his second North American match.
When it comes to Ren, all I want them to do right now is just copy and paste whatever they used to do with Jay White and David Finlay onto him. Make him, because he is a very competent, very talented wrestler. Make him the one that gloats about it. Make him rub it in people's faces because he can out wrestle a lot of people. That's my little like nugget of knowledge, other than saying that Jake should be a juggalo. please let Ren Narita not be a chicken heel anymore. Let him be the wrestler, like the wrestler that he is, but also be a little bratty about it.
Moving on to OSKAR's tag team partner, Yuto-Ice, taking on the Great O-Khan, the Knockout Brothers United Empire tag match that we just saw at Dominion, getting a bit of a rewind here. Though, of course, it was Yuto and HENARE carrying the bulk of that match. Again, like I said, these are OSKAR and Yuto-Ice's singles debut in the US, and I think just their second overall matches. There was that tag match against GOA in February. I think these are the only matches they've had in the US thus far. If to the point of, kind of everything being very dark and whatnot, the solo presentation of OSKAR is very stern, this imposing Wagnerian giant, from Germany and whatnot. When he's out there by himself, they are really leaning into like fun-loving party guy Yuto-Ice.
I love
it so much. A lot of new music for a lot of the guys. None of it was especially notable or whatever.
And,
but just,
and a lot of new gear because it's G1. And
you had him coming out.
It was a whiteout, as it were. There was too much ice on Yuto-Ice. It was
so much ice.
It was blinding. It was beautiful. I love the big match whites, but I was like, there's just so much white because usually that's like He had like Goto's costume, but with like no black. It was
Yeah.
just all white.
And just a bunch of let's call them. I'm sure they're real diamonds. Of course,
Oh
they're real
yes,
diamonds. Who am I? What am I kidding?
Swarovski crystals.
How dare I impugn the credibility of Yuto-Ice here as he's got his outfit all iced out. For his part, Okan is shoving the tag title that he took off of Ice in his face as they square off before the bell. Okan is stalling and moving in and out of the ring to stay ahead and one step ahead of Ice. Again, in that title match, the real thread was Yuto-Ice not having enough experience and not having enough savvy to realize when he had to tag out. So Okan continuing to take advantage of kind of Ice's kind of youthful impetuousness, running around like a little rabid chihuahua, made a lot of sense in this match. What did not make sense was a whole slew of chair shots on the outside in full view of the ref, even after Ren Narita went to the work of like distracting the ref before doing the chair shot. Nah, just Okan just clubbing away at Yuto-Ice in full view of Kenta Sato. Again, I guess we have to go to the stretched. If it's outside of the ring, it's not the ref's purview, but oy vey. Anyway, the crowd, including Chicago's infamous Jushin Thunder Liger suit guy, they were chanting something at Okan, but again, I couldn't really make it out with the audio mix.
I couldn't either.
I was going to say, admittedly, I was out DJing until 3 a.m. Today in a club with a very, very loud system, but I couldn't hear anything, and you couldn't either in terms of what they were saying.
Because the audio levels were so like
Yeah.
kind of off, I couldn't hear it. But I will say this: Chicago was giving Osaka vibes, and I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah, no, they got into this. They got up for it. They definitely got up for it here. Ice is fighting from underneath, but he's unable to build much to overcome Okan's eye gouging and cheap shots. The bumbleclot knee gets him a 2 count, but a low blow after a ref bump keeps Okan in control. A spin out sidewalk slam gets a 2 count, and then a massive cheer from the crowd who bought on that, kind of sit out, spinning sidewalk slam. They bought that as the finish, and were just overjoyed that this peppy little party dude was still in the match. Okan follows up with some repeated Iron Claw head slams, but a knee to counter a full Iron Claw attempt lets Ice follow up with the Cruella knee to pin Okan in 11 minutes and 11 seconds. Make a wish, everybody. In terms of bell to bell, this was just kind of okay. You have a couple of guys who, if I'm going to be honest, I think these are 2 guys who really fancy themselves to be like serious strikers, but look, they're not Shingo, they're not Ishii. And as a result, I think both end up, and they understand at some level that they have to kind of rely on a lot of character work and heat. Ice has become really adept at the babyface in peril work in tag matches, and I think here you saw a blueprint of how that sort of role that he has played in those KOB matches could be ported over to singles matches, which I do think can work for them. I don't know that this match it felt a lot longer than 11 minutes. It felt
it felt long.
Yeah, and both guys looked pretty winded down the stretch. But again, the crowd was buying what Yuto-Ice was selling here, absolutely getting into all of the near falls and everything. I am going to go with a 3-star Highland Park 12 whiskey, but one that maybe takes a little bit too long to be poured and served to you. The bartender's really in the weeds and takes a while to get you your drink. And it kind of feels like a bit, something that kind of has to be like knocked back quickly rather than savored. But again, I think in terms of a match that on paper you're not expecting this to be, Tsuji versus Takeshita or anything like that, but it got what it needed to get done. I think in terms of the character work, kind of similar to the OSKAR match beforehand, right? These were matches that are trying to establish these guys as singles presences within the G1, and I think by that measure, those did both succeed.
Mine's gonna be just a straight up three scoop. Maybe the cone's a little leaky, just because I could have done without the chair shots. Again, I would have given it more I would have given it some toppings had it not devolved into that, because I don't feel like either of these guys needed that. Okan has been around long enough that he can be fine with a chair shot, singular, a low blow, singular. He doesn't need to keep doing all of these things. I just found it to be a little unnecessary. So
I mean, we're really going in hard on the United Empire as, you know, your number one heel presence within New Japan, which obviously I'm in favor of. What's worked about the UE thus far as that presence is that they haven't been the House of Torture. And,
Yes.
you know, you kind of got to cut that off at the passes.
They're not supposed to need to do what House of Torture does.
Yes, they can heal it up, cheat, you know, do all of that. That's fine. But let's try to keep it within the confines of what's believable in a New Japan ring. Up next, Shota Umino versus Zack Sabre Jr., a main event in any building, especially the Tokyo Dome. Yes, we're looking at the Wrestle Kingdom Rewind.
Several buildings, actually.
Yes. Now, of course. They have had 2 matches since that infamous Wrestle Kingdom match last year, which were infinitely better than that debacle. As much as I am loath to give Shota Umino too much credit, he has had a pretty decent 2026. He's improved. I think him being in the global title mix really makes a lot of sense. To make a very, very extreme comparison here, Karen, immediately after the 2016 election, outgoing President Barack Obama told Donald Trump that America would succeed if he succeeded. And that's sort of where I am with Shota Umino. New Japan is a better place if he succeeds, and so I want Shota Umino to succeed. That's where I am with him. One other thing. I'm sorry. Look, this was a pretty good match. We're going to get to it. It was a pretty good match, but it's Shota Umino, and there's so many things to say. We know that Umino loves to give out wristbands to little kids, you know, at the Japanese shows. But look, you're going to be hard pressed to find a 6-year-old kid sitting in the front row at a New Japan show in Chicago. So instead, we get the sight of Umino giving the wrist strap to a young person who looked like they probably already had their learner's permit and who was wearing a House of Torture shirt to boot. So I just love the, like, you know, Umino has to give an angsty teenager, you know, rather than a cute little kid, the wristband. I got a kick out of that.
To that teenager's credit, they took it and weren't rude about it.
No, and high-fived him afterwards and everything. So
they were a good sport about it.
Yeah, you got to play along when pro wrestling comes to your town. Umino puts a mark on Sabre's knee early on in this match. Sabre's changing levels, moving back and forth between the neck and the leg in the early going. He's obviously very much like going back to the Wrestle Kingdom match, and even before that, he's able to cut Umino's offense off by grabbing whatever limb or body part is available to him. Umino nails a high angle drop kick, which looks like it knocks Sabre's nose around, possibly out of joint. Thankfully, if it was broken, it wasn't bleeding, so that's enough. He hits a very nice fisherman suplex for a 2 count and a nicely executed version of his inside out DDT that Sabre sells perfectly, looking like he's coming down square on the crown of his head. Sabre somehow gets an octopus applied on the top rope. Speaking of which, at some point, the English commentary mentioned that Jonathan Gresham was in the front row. So there you go. Speaking of octopi. Yeah. And then
that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Well, he just did that the Produce Orange Crush show that Zack was on. So there's probably a little tit for tat there. I don't know if I'm going to have time to get that match or that show watched before the G1 picks up, but it is on my docket. Anyway, Zack transitions out of the octopus with a nice looking sunset bomb. We speed things up into some quicker exchanges about 12 minutes in with PKs and DDTs being traded before Zack begins to move through his classic 6-second rotation of submissions. Shota gets to the rope and hits his own version of the Zack driver. A running knee gets him a 2 count. Portion of the crowd really beginning to get into this. Zack is working the arm, but Umino powers through with a lariat, and a very, very nasty eponymous Zack driver gets Zack a 2 count as we go to 20 minutes. Zack reverses an O'Connor roll into a rear naked choke, and then he transitions out of that into another Zack driver for the win. Or excuse me, that was 15 minutes earlier, not 20. I apologize, because we are giving Zack the win in 16 minutes and 10 seconds. And also, interestingly, brings their singles record to 4 wins apiece, going back, like I said, much further than the infamous Wrestle Kingdom match. I thought that this was kind of up to the standard of the slow but steady improvement Umino has had this year. It wasn't always explosive. It wasn't show stealing, but I do feel, to our comments about somebody like Wolf earlier on, a lot of the gaps in Umino's game are beginning to be filled out. Zack is somebody who knows how to connect the dots of a match like this and set Umino up for success. The difference, of course, was at Wrestle Kingdom, Umino did not avail himself of those opportunities. He did here. I'd go with a healthy pouring of 3-star plus Highland Park, good amount of snacks on the side. Ended up enjoying this one a fair deal.
I really enjoyed this match. I actually am leaning towards the 3.75.
Yeah.
So I was tempted to give it a 4, but then I reeled it back only because I know Shota had good intentions, but there were too many points in this match where it looked like Zack was getting hurt between the knee, the nose, when he got dropped on his head. It was I was like, I know Umino's doing his best, and he has, like you said, he has improved. But at the same time, I'm just like, oh gosh, we need Zack for this G1. He cannot go out in the first night like this.
They're working, you brother. They're working.
You know how emotionally invested I get. I'm like everyone's mom. I'm just like, oh honey, please put a band-aid on that. You'll be fine. But yeah, I'll give it a 3.75. So 3 scoops and some fun toppings.
And myself, of course, sadistically just wants dudes to just drop each other on their heads all the time. So that did not bother me with this one. But yeah,
we balance each other out in that aspect.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, no, pretty damn good stuff here. And again, I think that's now 3 matches in a row that these guys have had that have done a lot to kind of, especially for somebody who loathed that Wrestle Kingdom match, to kind of atone for that makeup and turn the page and move forward into the second chapter.
Oh
perhaps.
God!
Accidentally there.
That was not accidental.
All right. Hirooki Goto versus SANADA, very much like the Shingo match that we were talking about earlier. Kind of your pure rank and file G1 competitors like Shingo and Goto, exactly the sort of people that if I was, traveling to the States or going to this show or whatever, these are the guys I'd be plunking down my money to see, right? Kind of sucks that, kind of like Shingo, Goto is saddled with the House of Torture upon, being in America. Goto's really only in the US once a year. And of course, the fine people of Hoffman Estates are watching him schlep around with a definitely not at 100% SANADA for this match. But as you alluded to before, man, SANADA is definitely working to distract from whatever gaps there might be in his in-ring with a geometrically patterned shiny gold suit and a matching gigantic hat, which would put the late great Royce Reed to shame. Could you give any description or account of the sartorial look we got from SANADA?
All right, so you remember back before he was champion, he had that like disco ball mirrored outfit with the big pointy. It was that, but all gold. Like it looked like he was trying to be the World Cup trophy. Giant gold hat with
ball on the top right, yeah.
From head to toe, all gold, all mirrored. It wasn't giving gold finger, but at the same time, I was like, what kind of hat is that? It was very wide brimmed, but not a sombrero. But visually, I could see it in the low light, but
yes,
it's a lot. It's a lot.
yeah, you definitely weren't going to miss Yuto-Ice or SANADA.
It was giving World Cup trophy.
I like that as an analogy. SANADA baits Goto in with a handshake to jump him and brawl around the ring. He gets the Paradise Lock on back in the ring and steals Goto's own Ushi-Goroshi and an awkward-looking magic screw on the outside. Goto evades a moonsault and hits an Ushi-Goroshi of his own. SANADA is still very much drawing from the Muto playbook with the Shining Wizard, but some very, very slick work from Goto nets a reverse GTR and a lariat for a double down. SANADA uses the moonsault to jump to sort of land in the position of applying the skull end, classic SANADA move right there. He successfully hits the moonsault for 2. Goto is back into it with the GTW at the 10-minute mark. More reversals from both men. SANADA tries to fight out of a GTR, but does not have the strength to do so. So as Goto hits it, he is pinned for, Goto pins SANADA in 12 minutes. It is impossible to not sympathize with Saya Sanada at a human level,
Yeah.
especially as we talked about a month ago, that the fake video that went up, detailing all of the stuff about volunteering for a dog shelter, for God's sake. And
Uh,
obviously,
and apparently that's where he met his wife, who WH Pretzel
God,
told me about. Like, she was a pop idol. They fell in love. How can you not love that?
that's a soap. That's not even a soap opera plot line. That's too saccharine. The pop idol and the pro
I
wrestler
love it. I love
meet
it
over
so.
their
Oh, their love
fall
for
in love over their shared bond of taking care of abandoned pups. Oh my God. And then, of course, more importantly for our purposes here, the extent of the arm injury that he got into, in that little
Yeah.
video. But it is apparent that that injury is still really limiting his ability to work at the level that he was once at. A lot of his signature moves just do not have the sauce that they once did. SANADA was never the smoothest of workers, and I think he very much always relied on, mostly on Okada, but others, to kind of paper things over. And to his credit, Goto did a great job, a
Yeah.
fantastic job of doing that for SANADA here. This wasn't like a carry job in the most literal sense of the term, when somebody is like the Osprey Naito match where he was freaking concussed, or when you're working with somebody who just doesn't have the
Yeah.
expertise to be in the ring. But this was a masterclass in Goto being exactly where SANADA needed him to be at
Yeah.
exactly the right time. This is still just in kind of like just below a 3-star match,
Yeah.
a 3-star Highland Park whiskey from me. The issue is that I do not think that SANADA can count on having somebody with the veteran skills of a Goto across the ring from him for the remainder
Yeah.
of his matches, with the exception of the matches that he has with a Shingo and a Takeshita. I think
Yeah.
those guys could get SANADA to this level of a match for the remainder of the tournament. I do not see anybody else being able to do as much for SANADA as Goto did here, because Goto had to do a lot.
Yeah. And that's why I'm gonna give it just a flat 3, just because we saw shades of SANADA that we have not seen since he joined the House of Torture. I can't remember the last time I saw a shining wizard come out of this guy, or multiple moonsaults. And I don't want to say it's a pity scoring, because it was refreshing to see those sides of him again. But again, like we talked about, for me, I was pleasantly surprised by his performance in this match. I was expecting it to be a complete throwaway once the Paradise Lock happened. I was like, oh, Goto's gonna do the Lord's work today and put SANADA over for some reason. But at the same time, it's like you said, this is where I would say, with guys like SANADA and Jake Lee that have these, career altering injuries, this is when I make the case for guys like Taichi and Yoshihashi, because they can fill those gaps. And
Mhm.
the blocks that are built as they are, it's not that the guys are incapable of giving quality matches, but they don't have the veteran expertise where they are able to do this, assisting, or papering, as you keep saying, papering over of the shortcomings.
Mhm.
And I feel
Mhm.
like as the G1 goes along, guys like Jake and SANADA are going to be very vulnerable, and they're going to have a really tough time when they're just there trying to make the tournament as best they can. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that Jake SANADA match is, that's gonna be. I mean, I was joking about it with Eric earlier, but like it's going to be rough sledding.
But when you think about it, it's going to be a very, like, they're probably going to try to do the best they can, or it'll be like the finger poke of death and over in a minute and 33 seconds.
Yeah, I think that's kind of probably best for everybody.
Yeah.
Getting into the upper end of the card here, we've got Yuya Umura versus Callum Newman. I thought a pretty interesting matchup in terms of the booking of both guys in 2026. You have
Mhm.
one guy who is obviously very, very quickly elevated to the absolute top of the company, and another who has been kind of, like I said off the top, been very, very slowly elevated at a snail's pace. But a bit of a dark horse pick, perhaps, but I have Umura penciled in as my pick for winning the tournament. I
So
know
so
that's not.
so do WH and I. So don't feel bad.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to be pretty uncommon
Yeah.
around there, but yeah.
Really?
I I think for me, it's the fact that like you are seeing odd little individual elevations for
Yeah.
a lot of these guys kind of in their own directions, right? For Oiwa, it's been through the tag matches with Zack and also through his singles matches with Umura. With Umino, it's been the global title business and everything wrapped up with Gabe Kidd and the Death Riders and whatnot. With Callum Newman, it was just like, yep, good to go. Let's give him that little, like, kind of brief little taster of a title run and whatnot. And obviously, we have Tsuji as the de facto face of the company. And I don't know, I just think with the history between Tsuji and Umura, that makes a lot of sense. Um, these two, Callum Newman and Uemura, are tied with one win apiece against each other. Uemura beat Newman in last year's G1, and Newman beat Uemura in that stellar New Japan Cup final, which of course he converted into that title win. There's obviously also a real meal to be made out of Newman's shoulder injury that he suffered at Dominion in both this and the rest of his matches. Chris Charlton also lets us know that this is not only Callum Newman's first match in America, it's his first time being in North America.
Wow.
Full
Well,
stop. So,
he is only what, 23?
yeah,
He
true.
hasn't he's very young.
It's a very, very fast start here, as you might expect, with Newman trying to use his speed to avoid the arm drags of Uemura. Uemura is locked in on the shoulder early on, but Newman is able to outrun and outkick Uemura to the outside and then just drives him through about 8 or so rows of chairs. Uemura gets back into it, back in the ring with a very nice drop kick and arm drag combo. He's locking back in on the shoulder with a hammerlock. Newman very, very deftly flips around a lariat attempt from Uemura into kind of a spinning takedown into a rear naked choke. It's almost like a sling blade reversal into a rear naked choke. It looked really cool. There's a very nice exchange of counters, drop kicks, and suplexes from both guys, leading to Uemura getting another arm bar locked in. Newman escapes and baits Uemura into coming at him rashly by spitting at him, leading to the delayed Princess Curse brainbuster. But Newman's shoulder is too worked over for him to get the pin on in time for a 3 count. Uemura gets a release deadbolt suplex and a top rope crossbody for 2. He goes back to the top rope but misses with a frog splash. Newman immediately capitalizes with his Excalibur double stomp. That gets a 2 count. Quick trades of kicks and counters from both men. Bridging Dragon suplex gets Uemura a 2 as the crowd is really getting up for this as we hit 15 minutes. But a Kiss the Crown lariat sets up the make way sidewalk slam to net Newman the win in 15 minutes and 42 seconds. Like I said off at the top, I am very much in the tank for Uemura. He hasn't had much in the way of high profile booking this year, but again, I know I'm a broken record about this, but that match between him and Oiwa was my favorite match of the tournament last year, and for me is just the blueprint of what I want the future of this company to be. Regardless of whether or not he wins the tournament, I think he's just one of the most directly enjoyable wrestlers to watch in singles matches in the promotion right now, just in terms of pure work. I really liked this pairing, not just in terms of the heel face work, but the mix of speed, fluidity, and power and technique. Both guys are really coming into in their own. I think they really made a meal out of the threat of Newman's injury in this match. It maybe wasn't the flashiest or loudest match, at least until the last couple of minutes, but more than a match that I liked more than enough to award my first 4-star Glenn Farkless 17 whiskey of the tournament.
I gave it a 4.5 because I'm a sucker, and I also love that they were like, we're talking about like with people dealing with injuries. Even though Newman's been like, he's literally fighting with one arm at the moment, it doesn't really seem to impact his work as much as other people's injuries are impacting their work. So I give it 4.5. So they get some toppings because they did very well.
Yeah, really, really enjoyable.
I was very dialed in for this match, which some of the other matches I was just kind of like standing there and like, this is going on way too long. But this, I want more of this.
This was the match that made me go back and take a look at the night 1 of the tournament from last year. And I'm just like, man, I think I'm already giving this this card the nod over the night one of the tournament from last year. And with the last two matches, looking pretty solid on paper, I
Yeah.
was feeling pretty good about the shape of things by the time we got to this point in the card. Rocky Romero introduced not as Black Tiger, as we recently just saw him, but here as the Vice President of New Japan America, joins the English comms desk for our last two matches. The first of which is Boltin Oleg and Ryohei Oiwa. I had this one circled well ahead of time.
Yes.
Just because we're looking at just like the two of the most exciting young big bruisers and beefy dudes in the company right now. They had a good but not, I wouldn't say fantastic match in the G1 last year. Oiwa has looked so good in so many of those tag matches with Zack Sabre that I thought they'd be able to kind of, step up a little bit from that last match. Again, we get like a few other people, we get a new theme song for Oiwa. I think some new gear as well. No real strong feelings about either of those.
Very nice, very shiny new gear.
Yep. They note on English comms that Oleg is the reigning New Japan Strong Champ. They call him the reigning Strong Champ 3 or so times. Never called him the defending champ, and that's probably a good thing given that he has not defended kind of that vestigial appendix of a dead end belt since he took.
It's in Mexico with the tag belts.
Yeah, it might as well be. It might as well be. He took it off. I think like Ishii hadn't defended it in like 9 months or something like that, and then Oleg takes it off of Ishii in February, and we haven't seen it really in action since February. We get the big boys struggling early on to get a belly to belly on one another. It ends up being Oleg who hits the suplex. Each just really kind of getting into a good sense of kind of grimy struggle for very basic hip tosses, arm drags, and arm locks. It's a very even match here with Oleg getting the Boltin shake and then the Boltin bomb for a 2 count about 6 minutes in. The crowd is split with dueling chants going back and forth as Oiwa is softening up Oleg's shoulder, but Oleg is able to endure enough of that to hit his verdict F5 for a 2 count. Oiwa kind of grapples out of a torture rack position, but Oleg adjusts and hits a modified but not entirely elevated kind of short-range kamikaze. Oiwa cannot convert a roll-through into a German suplex. Oleg is able to hit a bridging German. Oiwa is able to convert that into more shoulder work before a 2 count, and then keeps a deep hammerlock in, even as Oleg falls back onto him, climbs up onto the second rope with Oiwa applying the hammerlock, falls backwards, squishes the dude off the second rope. However, Oiwa keeps the hammerlock applied, and Oleg submits to the armlock in 13 minutes and 28 seconds. This was really fun. It was a very fun and simple struggle that I think mixed a nice balance of technical and power work. I think, it's like we're in Chicago. I'm like, yeah, something like this, fits in very well with, 1980s AWA or something like that. I just really liked how simple and unadorned both men's work and presentation was. That very much matched the story of Oleg being unable to power his way out of really direct limb work. Think of how many times you've seen somebody get a triangle applied and of course the dude's going to power bomb his way out of that, right? I liked the idea of kind of taking that, what is often kind of a transition spot in many matches, and using that as the crux and finale of this match. Whatever comparisons you would want to make, Steve Williams, early Scott Steiner, Kojima, Oiwa feels really comfortable in the mode of work that he is in right now. I still don't know that this is maybe quite at the full potential that these two have, but it was better than last year's match. I'd say worthy of another 4-star pour of Glenn Farkless 17.
I'll give them a solid 4 as well, with 4 very beefy scoops of ice cream, because I liked how much they've progressed since last year's G1. I feel like they've both grown as wrestlers, and they really started figuring out how to polish and hone in on what they're working with. And I liked that they were evenly matched. I feel like every time Oiwa shows up for a tournament, he's like the guy that ate the guy before him. Like, he just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But even though he was still shorter than Oleg, they They have a chemistry that I am very excited to see pans out the next 5 years.
Yeah, yeah. That's really, again, kind of what I'm enjoying about how many young guys there are in here. I was meaning to do, I did not have time to do it yesterday, to do a whole deep dive into the existing track records of all of your different competitors in the blocks and finding out how many first time matches we have. Or, like I said, Zack and Oiwa, or excuse me, Zack and Umino being 4 for 4 with one another. Maybe I'll get that done, and up and posted
With
before
your
the
with your
the next match.
copious amounts of free time.
Oh, all of the free time I've got right now as we head into to exam season and whatnot for me and the education racket. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, like having those sorts of with this many young guys on the come up, beginning to sow seeds for feuds and programs that can go that you dream on, right, and that you sort of hope to be able to see carried on in the future. Again, Umura and Oiwa was the big one for me last year, but there's so many other combinations, and this is one of them. That
And
I think you can look forward to.
Oiwa can now make his case for Oleg's yet to be defended openweight
Sure,
championship.
sure.
Run
Why
it
not?
back.
Why not?
Run it back, just not right after the G1. Save it for
Yeah.
like November.
Yeah. We've reached main event time here with Konosuke Takeshita versus Tsuji, a Wrestle Kingdom rematch of, I will say, a much higher caliber than the Zack and Shota one, and a very, very interesting booking question, I thought, going into this match happening on U.S. soil, Karen. Takeshita is obviously very, very familiar to U.S. audiences. There's the question of whether New Japan was going to want to put the kind of the designated face of the company, of the new generation of the company, over in front of that audience, in spite of the fact that he holds the most recent win against Takeshita in their singles matches at Wrestle Kingdom earlier this year. Factor in all of Tsuji's public. I'm gonna look, when Japanese wrestlers talk to the press, seemingly kind of like out of character, or referring to kind of the wrestling business as a whole, on the one hand, it's of a different tone and of a different register than American wrestlers doing this, but you still have to recognize that, look, they're still workers here, right? So Tsuji's comments about AEW and the fact that he sees very little value in New Japan continuing to work with AEW and whatnot, to the point that Tony Khan was being asked how he felt about what Tsuji
Oh
had to say
Lord.
and everything like that, right? Like, come on, we're talking about workers here. But I do think that those that position that Tsuji has taken as the face of the company, I guess he won't get in trouble for making any comments about trading card games since the sale of the company. But anyway, was it trading card? Was it collectible card, like trading cards?
It was
like making?
trading both physical cards and digital content.
Right. So he won't get in trouble in that regard anymore. But he's still kind of flexing his muscle, as the face of the promotion by making those AEW comments. So I think, again, like, just on paper, even regardless of it's a chance to run back a really quality Wrestle Kingdom main event, I think you were faced with something really interesting in terms of the booking and setup of this match.
Yes, I enjoyed it, but it was it's interesting, like, switching of the roles when it comes to especially how Takeshita is perceived and presented in Japan. It's just like they just like flip the script, indirectly or on purpose. It was a very curious, but a very well selected main event.
Absolutely. To our point there's a big pop for Takeshita, less so of one for Tsuji, as he comes out once again to the Wildfire theme by May J, which I'm still like, I'm sure I'll get used to it at some point, but it is just like, it's just really sugary, not hyper pop, but kind of hyped up, over caffeinated pop music.
It's always difficult when there's such a large shift for someone's theme song that you've associated with them for so long.
As people were sort of pointing out, there is precedent for a seemingly very, very badass pro wrestler possibly just selecting a very sweet, in this other case, a ballad, by
Mm.
a female pop singer that seems to run very counter to their presentation in, of course, Minoru Suzuki. Whether or not it's just a case of these guys, I find it's interesting, like when you've got like American pro wrestlers who are kind of like, oh, I want to, do this to, I kind of want to parlay my experience or my fame or my job into
Yeah.
meeting these, into
Yeah.
getting into these other fields, or I want to go into comedy, I want to go into acting, or whatever it is. There's something very sweet about, like, I think it'd be really nice if this pop singer that I like had a song that I could listen to when I came out. Like, it's very
Well,
sweet.
the interesting thing about Tsuji is that it's not just that, but he also has a very vested interest in Takarakuza, which is like the all women's like musical theater, which is very popular in like
Huh.
it is a very historic cultural icon, especially
Hmm.
it's out in Osaka in West Japan. But he openly talks about going to see their shows, and it's fantastic. So it's kind of like I feel like he's kind of not leaning into that by like embracing a female musician, but that he's also like trying to find a way to loop in his personal interests as well, which is I mean, I'll take it over Yo's fashion expressions any
Yeah,
day of the week,
sure.
but it's not like Suzuki's ballad for his entrance because that's a song that's become so synonymous with him that people sing along to it, and
Oh
he
yeah.
kind of commands you to sing along with it. This one, it doesn't have that same
No.
cinematic feeling to it. It's like it feels good. It's a feel good song, but it's a very different vibe from what his like Godzilla entrance that he had for a couple years.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um on commentary, to further complicate kind of the booking, questions of all of this, Rocky Romero is, of course, having to play up all of the Don Callis family dynamic with Takeshita as well to throw a further wrench into all of the works. As we get started here, Tsuji's speed and lucha work put him in control early on in what is basically kind of just a heat period, with, I would say, the crowd leaning 70-30% in Takeshita's favor. Takeshita gets the power drive knee and a massive Konhilo that he almost totally overshoots on. He just flew on this thing. Takeshita was able to kind of take a step back or whatever, I think, and cover for most of it. An exploder gets him a 2 count. Tsuji cannot fight out of the bastard driver wheelbarrow suplex combination that Takeshita goes for. He's struggling. The big guy is kind of watching Takeshita get somebody of Tsuji's size over for the avalanche or the wheelbarrow while Tsuji is struggling. Again, very, very impressive.
Yeah.
The Blue Thunder Bomb gets Takeshita a 2. Tsuji's got the very well-established Boston Crab, which of course kept the global belt around his waist in the USA in February. He converts that into a modified power bomb, sort of out of the Styles Clash position, just kind of sitting backwards and down out of a Styles Clash. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. Takeshita ducks and avoids a Gene Blast in order to hit a Poison Rana, and counters another attempt with a brutal power drive knee for 2, which really gets the crowd standing and cheering. That knee that Takeshita hit, that was the real switch in this match. Tsuji hits this giant modified Uranage, which is apparently being called the Silver Lining now. That gets him a 2 count, and another G1 chant that the crowd started the evening off with about 15 minutes in. It's a brief little drop off in that chant, and you can just hear one dude pretty close to the commentary just yelling, G1 fucking Climax. Bless you, sir. Bless you. This is why you book a show in America every now and again. Tsuji hits a big running knee, and Takeshita cuts off the Marlowe crash and takes Tsuji up to the top for what looks like we are maybe going to get one of those absolutely harrowing top rope ring posts that we have seen Tsuji go for in his matches with Andrade. What's going to happen here? basically both men just kind of fell backwards onto the mat. You could sort of maybe say it's like almost like a modified Russian leg sweep, but it's both dudes just kind of taking flat back bumps to the mat off of the top for a standing 10 count. The count gets to 9 before both men reach up to kind of grab Red Shoe's hand at 9 to stop that count. Takeshita gets the better of a standing strike exchange. Tsuji counters another power drive knee with a standing Gene Blast. Tsuji hits a power drive of his own, but that only gets a 1 count as we go to 20 minutes. A full, unadorned, running Gene Blast is hit by Tsuji, but only gets a 1 and a 2. So it is time, calling back to the theme song, for the full bore, still fresh Fire Blaster. Delivered to Takeshita, which nets Tsuji his first 2 points in the tournament in 20 minutes and 52 seconds. The back half of this kind of felt like a condensed version of the kind of classic, not even G1, but just the classic New Japan big main event formula. But I did appreciate these guys kind of changing the first half of this match into basically 2 segments: a control period for Tsuji, and then a big, shine spot for Takeshita, kind of working as the de facto babyface here. As we know, Tsuji's matches are better when they don't go too much past 20 minutes. So, a different and a flashier version of, I think, certainly some of the other kind of more traditional meat and potatoes G1 sort of matches that we saw earlier on in here. But something that I did think fit the fact that, you have a US crowd that is probably only going to get to see this New Japan show this year. So kind of giving them not just, kind of a G1 main event, but kind of a New Japan main event in a condensed form that, again, I think attended to all of the different balls that are in the air in terms of the heel and face dynamics, America versus Japan, the Wrestle Kingdom match, Don Callis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of kind of plates to keep spinning here. And I do think they did that. And, that again, we have another nice 4-star glass of Glenn Farkless 17 to round out the night 1.
I'm going to be very bold and give them a 4.75.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is what I want to feel when I see a G1. Like this, I'm not saying this is the baseline, but this is the kind of like pull I want during a match. I want to be like, not just like kick. I mean, I enjoy being kicked back on my couch because we're watching it like 4:00 in the morning. But I want something that like draws me in and keeps me focused. And like watching those 2 guys wrestle is kind of when I think of a G1. This is the level I expect. And I'll say this, and of course, like Newman and Umura and Oiwa and Boltin, and even Umino and Zack. That's what, when I think of the G1, that's I don't want to say it's the baseline, but it's kind of like the expectation I have. And I think, Takeshita and Tsuji got very creative in this match, especially that bastard driver to the wheelbarrow. I was like, oh, how is he?
Mm-hmm.
How are they? What are they? Oh God. So that's the kind of things that makes me want to be like, hey, have you ever watched the G1? This is the kind of match I would pitch to someone to get them to watch the G1.
Yeah. If we want, I mean, very, very quick little wind down here in the post match on the mic. Tsuji thanks Chicago for coming out. He acknowledges that it's really, really hot in here, and that that Takeshita has knocked him around very, very hard. But he will continue to fight in the G1 as the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. Are you ready? So yeah, to your point about this kind of like being a really nice cap to night 1. Not only did I feel that, but I kind of felt like really the top 3 matches on this show did a nice job of kind of reestablishing that, the G1 matters. The G1 should be this good. The G1 should be an opportunity for the pretty strong bunch of, 5 or 6 guys who, it's not been that, they haven't had good matches. It's not been that they haven't been putting the work in, right? It's been to do with the booking. It's been to do with a bunch of other issues that have kind of kept them down in the company over the last little while. This was a pretty, obviously, we're not talking like, 2016 G1. We're not talking, Shibata and Ishii, and everything. Woo! Fine. this is a different era of the company, but by the standards of this era of the company, I thought this was a really, really strong first foot to put forward in front of a crowd that, again, medium-sized. I think, it's a respectable, if not fantastic number, but the crowd that was there was into it, throughout all of this, even with kind of the muted sound that we could kind of have some difficulty with at times. I think you can probably tell which matches Karen and I are looking to recommend in this one here. Certainly, the top 3 matches: Newman and Umura, Oiwa and Boltin, Tsuji and Takeshita, I think are definitely all worth checking out. And sure, I'm feeling magnanimous. Let's go with the Zack and the Umino match as well. Yeah,
better check the temperature in hell real quick, make sure everything's all right.
Yeah. Bruce Lord says something positive about Shota Umino. Yeah, film at 11. But of course, that bit of business, the recommendations, is not all that we have to take care of. If folks are not aware, Post Wrestling has been running the G1 contest for many, many years at this point, in which a whole slew of readers and listeners have been building their own ballots and their own picks for the tournament. This is a contest that's put together every year by Post patron Chris Engler. Thank you so much to Chris for organizing this, crunching all of the data and presenting it. We've got all of the entries, of course, from Post readers and listeners. We have the illustrious C block, in which myself, Karen, and a handful of your other Post commentators have put their own picks in, as well as a whole bunch of computerized and AI versions that Chris has put together for this year. I don't know that it's worth really kind of going through the block standings at this particular juncture here. The guys who won have 2 points.
Everybody else has 0.
That's it. Nobody was able to completely predict all 9 matches of the of last night's show correctly. That'd be a very, very impressive feat if they did. However, we got 4 people who were able to get 8 out of 9 picks correctly. So congratulations to B from NY, Blake from Omaha, CJCW, and Post Wrestling's own WH Park for getting inside of Gato's head and picking 8 of the 9 matches correctly. Well done to all of those people. WH is obviously at the top of the C block. Eric Marcotte, John Pollock, Karen Peterson, and Wei Ting all have 6, with the likes of Davey Portman, Brandon from New Jersey, Neil Flanagan. I did terribly on this one. I only got 3 out of 9 correctly. And Brad Copping kind of fleshing out the bottom. Thus far, your various AI bots, let's see, Perplexity got 4 of them correctly. Randobot, the classic, just completely arbitrary coin flip
OG.
Got 4 of these correctly, and ChatGPT and Gemini 2 and 1 point respectively. So not speaking too well for the abilities of these things to get inside of Gato's mind.
They can't feel the vibes, man. They can't do the G1 vibes.
Look, there was that leak or whatever of the ChatGPT pitch WWE storyline of Bobby Lashley, who of course was not contracted with the WWE at the time, becoming obsessed with Japan and like wearing kimonos out to the ring and whatnot as a pitch for a WWE storyline. So look,
no,
I'm going to keep my own thoughts.
Don't do that.
As somebody who works in higher education, I'm going to zip my lip with regards to my thoughts and feelings about AI. But anyway. In terms of prediction statistics, this is always interesting, I think, in terms of what people were anticipating and how many people, the chalk picks that actually played out. Most people were able to predict, 69% of people were able to predict that Yuto-Ice would go over Great-O-Khan. I have a feeling that Yuto-Ice would approve of the 69% prediction rating there.
He would think it's nice.
Nice. 2/3 of folks had Sabre and Goto winning their respective matches. People were a little bit less bullish on Aaron Wolf. Only 62% of people had him going over HENARE. Newman versus Umura was a bit of a coin flip there at 59%. A lot of people were anticipating that I think Ren Narita would cheat his way to win over OSKAR, so only 41% of people getting that correctly. Ryohei Oiwa, a real dark horse here at 37%. Same for Jake Lee. Again, with Narita and Jake Lee, you're kind of you kind of have to just count on the tournament math, and that's very difficult to predict this early on. And then only 30% of people, to our point, to our question about Takeshita versus Tsuji, you had 70% of people assuming that Takeshita would get his win back against Tsuji. But of course, that was not the case. So again, folks will keep everybody appraised of the contest standings and, of course, the block standings as those things continue for the remainder of the tournament. Speaking of the remainder of the tournament, Karen, after this big opening night, we effectively have a week off, but you will be back with the boss man himself, John Pollock, on Sunday, July the 19th, with a review of nights 2 and 3 of the tournament from Sapporo. Night 2 has Drilla Maloney versus Gabe Kidd, the match that's been set up at Dominion. Obviously, a lot to look at there. You also got SANADA versus Great Khan, Jake Lee versus Takeshita. We'll see what Takeshita can get out of him. Yuto-Ice versus Oleg Boltin. Shingo Takagi versus Ryohei. What? That's the one I've got circled. That should be dope. Goto versus Tsuji should be good as well. You've got that in the A block, whereas on night 3, the B block will be offering Shota Umino versus Aaron Wolf, Drilla Maloney versus HENARE, Gabe Kidd versus OSKAR, Red Narita versus Callum Newman, and Zack Sabre Jr. versus Yuya Umura. Probably my pick for the one I'll be watching most closely there. So again, if you have not already done so, hop on over to postwrestlingcafe.com and make sure that you'll be able to hear that show and every single other G1 review that we will have on offer on the Post Cafe throughout the summer. As we're winding down here, Karen, is there anything else you'd like to plug either on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed or elsewhere?
Well, my week of philanthropy here at the Post Wrestling Cafe is over because everything else from here on out is back behind the paywall. Somewhere in between all of this G1 coverage, WH Park and I will be doing August post pro res. I think it's sandwiched between the weekend, the first weekend, and the finals. We're still working on the dates just to make sure, but it'll probably be everything but G1 because we have all of this other G1. But after I record with John the first weekend in August, the once in a blue moon, the annual meeting of the minds, Kate from Montreal and I will be back to cover a weekend of G1 coverage. And then I am off until I catch up with you and WH at the finals. But that's it for me.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I'll be there for the finals. I'm peppered throughout the G1 coverage. I don't have all of the dates in front of me. It's a bunch of them. I think I got 6 or 7 of the shows that I'll be doing. If you're so inclined in terms of plugs, you can follow me on Blue Sky at contrasoma.bsky.social. Like I mentioned earlier, probably more importantly, I will be joining John Pollock and Wei Ting for Rewind Away at the end of the month to talk about some of my favorite Akira Hokuto matches. I am really, really looking forward to talking about, bar none, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Even doing the research for that and watching a whole bunch of matches that we're not going to talk about. I had a grand time over the last couple of weeks digging back into the glory days of 90s AJW. I will also be cropping up on Collision Course in a couple of weeks. It has been way too long since I was able to talk some AEW with Kate from Montreal, so very much looking forward to that. All of that and so much more available through July and into August with all of the G1 coverage over at postwrestlingcafe.com. So, Karen, if there's nothing else you need to shout out, plug, or whatnot,
nope.
If Zelda needs to be taken for some walkies and whatnot,
probably
we can let everybody go.
The storm has let up a little bit, so I might be able to get outside.
So she doesn't have kind of the thunder zoomies or whatever. Yeah, okay.
Not yet.
All right. So on behalf of Karen Peterson, I have been Bruce Lord. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Take care.
Matane, bye-bye.